So today we're going to do a quick cleanup, how I like to do some stuff with curve extraction and wrap. I picked these teeth just because they're an interesting, I don't know, an interesting object to do. They have a lot of curvature on them in weird spots, and it's a little bit more extreme than you would find on a lot of other objects. So it's one of the just reasons I picked it. So say we wanted to, and this is kind of indicative of what you get out of a lot of different dental scanners, but that's kind of besides the point for what we're doing. Is you get some pretty clean meshes out there. It tries to fill in everything, so even if there was like some holes, it does a pretty good job. Now I cut the base of this thing off already, so this is a like plaster cast of an impression that was scanned. So another reason everything scans nicely, and it's on this block here. And then I cut off the bottom, so we do have a big giant hole in the bottom. That's not really a problem. But if there were some like little holes in here and things like that, obviously you'd fill it in if you want solid teeth. But it doesn't really matter for our workflow today. One thing that will matter is if, depending on the looking of your scan data, if there are some tight areas or something like that. So say we had, we were missing data like down in here, and there was a hole that was filled and it filled from like here to like the other side, or say there was a hole um, down somewhere in the gum line here, and it pushed and filled down like out through the edge here because there was a bunch of data missing, and we did have like a tunnel. Okay, tunnels are always kind of the bane of our existence with meshes because they go from an area that we do want to maybe an area that we don't want. So those are things that we would want to get rid of. And what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to trim this whole bottom piece off and keep just the gums here and upwards. So and maybe just around the back here also. So this is like something you could do really on any object, but I think it'd be good to kind of show off. So, and I'm going to use our curves and extraction tool to do this. But before I do that, like I said, tunnels are always the bane of our existence. So if I did have something that was like filled in and it was kind of weird, now this object being an open bottom and things, you can see stuff. But if these two objects were kind of connected together externally, I'm going to put curves around the outside and around the inside. I'm going to use those curves to trim the object. But if I had a tunnel from like here to like something that was a block inside or whatever else, or down through another surface, that would still be a connection. So I would have to get rid of that. And the easiest way to get rid of that obviously is to just delete some of the area, get rid of the tunnel on the inside, and then like hit delete. But Mesh Doctor does a great job at getting rid of that stuff. So I normally turn this on. And honestly, when I run Mesh Doctor, most of the time, I usually have small tunnels unchecked. Okay, because that's sometimes if you're scanning a lot of parametric parts and they actually have drilled holes in them and they're quite tiny, small tunnels can actually tend to get rid of those small holes that you might want. So one of the things I normally have unchecked for most of my mesh doctoring, I will check in an instance like this because we do want to make sure there isn't any tunnels going through, and there is one somewhere that's down through here. Now maybe it's just going through the top section, so it wouldn't matter for this, but I'm just going to say run it anyway with the small tunnels on to make sure that you have some good results with your part. So we'll hit apply on this, and wrap is going to run through here and fix this thing up here for me. So, and it went through and got rid of all the little spiky patches and creased angles and things like that I want. And it did get rid of our little small tunnel here, wherever that was. But just starting out with something that's pretty clean is always a good idea for doing something like this. And then I'm going to go into our Torves tool. Now, if I didn't run Mesh Doctor and it was kind of messed up, I would get a little warning when I hit extract here that, hey, are you sure you don't want to run Mesh Doctor first? Because if you have some different objects, like small tunnels, or some other weird spiky objects, you can get weird results doing this extract. So, but we did that already and it knows, wrap knows, so it doesn't ask me that question. But if that does come up, it's just prompting you should probably run Mesh Doctor. So the way this works is curvature sensitivity is how it defines where creases are. So the more I turn this up, the more little creased areas it's going to look for. So it might look for little tiny more sections, and it might also put extraction lines on areas that are kind of broad. So it might actually stick one like down the middle of this crease on the side of the tooth here. And these are things that we don't want. So we don't want to turn this up too high. I'm going to leave it at 70 right now. Separator sensitivity is kind of how big that section is on the angle where it's extracting stuff out. So like this, you can see we wouldn't necessarily want a separator that's pretty wide here, because then if it's pulling out this curve along the base, it may be able to waver along the curve. Now it's going to intelligently kind of stick to the outside of the curve, but it will kind of try to do shortest distance path on this type of curve extraction. So if you have a really wide separator, it may run all toward the inside, and we want to make sure that when we cut this thing, we're really staying in the line groove of the gums here. So, and then the minimum area here is how big in square millimeters, like it divides into little sections and sections things off. Now for this instance, we're going to want to make it pretty big. And if you want, we can run compute here. I'm just going to kind of show you what the stock, this isn't really a stock setting. It kind of makes this minimum area adjusted by the size of your object. But you'll see here we have some smaller areas that we're going to have to get rid of, because we really just want this whole top section, and we don't want all the teeth and things like that. Whereas if I come in and turn this up, it'll give me a range if I hover over this, believe it or not, of what we can do. So it's saying we can go up to 319 square millimeters. We want to keep stuff pretty big, so let's go up to like 200 and hit compute again. And you'll see kind of instantly what it does here is it gets rid of all those little small sections, and that's exactly what we want. So it did keep some of the sections on some of these teeth, and some of the other ones are in another section, but that's kind of exactly what we want. And the separator sensitivity is set at 60. Now, if I come in and turn this down, say to like 20, maybe we can get these lines a little bit finer. So let's hit OK on that and see what it does. And you'll get kind of a feeling, kind of with your scanner. This is generally pretty based on scanner resolution and then part size for the minimum area. So curvature sensitivity kind of always stays the same. Obviously, the more triangles there is in curves, the sharper definition you have between areas. And, it kind of plays into this. The separator sensitivity, if you had a very coarse mesh and you turn this way down, you may only get these separator lines so fine. So in that case, what I generally do is I might actually increase the polygon count. So say this only had like 250,000 polygons, like we might not be able to get this line this skinny. And I might want to, crank the polygon count some to do that. Now, the really easy way to do that is we can come in here and we can like add polygons as in our tools here in our polygon section. So, but we're not going to do that for now. We have enough going on. So let's come back here. I'm going to come back into our extract tool here with our dialog up. And now I said I wanted to do the inside of the gum line here, and I did, and I didn't get that. So what I'm actually going to do is turn the curvature sensitivity up a little bit here. So let's turn this to 80 and hit compute and see what we get there. And we may need to actually turn this minimum area down a little bit. And I think we do, because that didn't do really anything. And if I turn it up to 90 and hit compute, it's probably not going to give me anything else because my area is so big. So let's come and turn this down to like 150. And I tend to poke at this a little bit. I don't drive myself crazy to get what I want, because we're going to come in and draw what I want. But actually, it did what I want with turning the minimum area down now. So now I can see that, yeah, I got a couple teeth in here, but that's not a big deal. But I did get the line that I want around the gum lines here. So, or at least most of it. I got a little bit of work here that I can do, but that's okay. The different colors are just different regions that it's separated out. So I tend to leave this on when I'm editing, and they will update and things like that to let me know sections that I have. Sometimes it's hard to see curvature with the colors on if I'm drawing things by hand, so then I could turn it off so I can just see the mesh in general. If I was adding lines to where I wanted to draw curvature, and again, it can be a little hard, like if I was doing something that was a little flatter and I wanted to follow the line and there wasn't much shading on here that I could see of where that was, I can come in and click on curvature map, and it's going to show me, it's going to highlight those curvature areas for me. So if I really wanted to come in and like follow the bottom of this, which I probably might want to in this instance, like I could turn this on and I can really see where that curve line is better than I can just looking at the mesh. I mean, you can see it pretty well here, but the curvature map kind of gives me some other tools to use. So feel free to toggle them off and on, check stuff out. So, and this is actually, I think, where I'm going to put it, because this looks like it was just gums. So now that I look at this thing, these look like they're lumps and gums, so I'm going to leave those there. or maybe there was some other stuff in the impressions, but again, we're going to leave those there because we want to keep all the gums. So let's come in and start editing this thing now. So there's a bunch of little tools here. Okay, we're going to use this remove islands a bunch, and then we have things for small regions we can get rid of if there's little tiny regions that were in here, but we don't really have any. We can fill stuff in, and then we can merge different regions together. So they're one group if we want to. We can click on different regions and merge them all as like one piece. Okay, so but play with some of the tools that are in here. This selection tool size is basically how big your paintbrush is. So, and you can change this number depending on how far you want to zoom in and stuff. Now this will take a little bit of mouse dexterity depending on what we're doing. And I am going to kind of get rid of some of this back end here. So we're going to draw another line in here. So what I'm going to do is come in and say, hey, instead of following this back line all the way to the end here, what I want to do is come in and I'm going to draw closer to the back end of the tooth here. So you can see colors are going to randomly update as I do this. You'll see my selection size is 5. As I zoom in, things will get better, but it's going to really follow the triangles that are there. So if I have coarse triangle size, things get a little bit worse. So, and then I want to cut this back end off. So you'll see down on the bottom bar here is our selection tools. So we can see that if I hit Control, left button, deselect triangles. So I'll hold down Control and I can do a swipe on this. What I want is kind of the teeth and all these gums to be one color at the end of the day is what I'm going for. So I'm going to kind of cut everything else because I don't want these separate regions in here. Now, where they hit the boundary, they are definitely not going to go away. So I always do a swipe up against like the boundary too. So I'll control swipe those guys to get rid of that. And then we're just going to want to put a swipe in here to get, what I'm trying to do is just break these all into one region. I'm going to put a slice in here. We're going to get rid of the separator between these two teeth here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut this back to where I want it, the curve to follow. I'm going to get rid of this tooth because we don't want that. And now this takes a little bit of time, and like some people say, like, oh, I can come along here and I can draw curves on mesh maybe faster than this. And you might be able to in some cases, but this works out pretty well. After I make a couple swipes as I'm killing things, you see I'm not worried about little pieces, because what I'm going to do is come in and hit remove islands. And you'll see it's going to get rid of stuff that's like sectioned off on its own. Now, I didn't swipe this line yet, so that's one of the reasons why I didn't get rid of that stuff. If I hit remove islands again, it got rid of some of the end piece here. And then what we're going to want to do is we definitely want to like swipe in there and swipe in there. And I'm going to cut this off. Hit remove islands again. So we can see we're getting rid of stuff that we don't want. So. And I didn't trim this very well either. I meant to trim up here and not the other side. So this is going to take a couple seconds here, but it's not going to take too much time. I'm going to try to follow the curve of that. And let's come around to the other side here where this was following through. And we're going to do some of that similar kind of gum line curve that's like not hanging off the back of the object. But I think I am going to come back just a little bit past the tooth here. So I'm going to come up like this and then come down, and then we'll come out the side here. So, and then this area, you can see it didn't follow the gum line in. So we're actually going to come in, and this is one of those areas too, especially with that green. It's a little hard to follow, but if I turn on the curvature map, it lights up. Really easy to follow. So now I can come in and say, we're going to go here, and I'm going to come up through here and just come over to my line. And I'm going to say that's my new gum line area. If I turn my curvature map off, I can see I just have another block there. We want to trim this off. And we're going to trim off a couple other objects here. So again, I want to trim there. I want to trim there. And I want to trim here because we don't want this back end. I'm going to trim again through here. We're going to get rid of this piece down on the end. Like that. I'm going to see if I probably have one on the other side too. So we'll get rid of this. And this whole section we don't care about. This is still connected in here, so what I'm going to do is come in and we're going to get rid of some of this stuff here. Now this area, I do want to get a little bit closer to the gum line here, so I'm going to come out here and chop all that off too. I'm going to remove islands again, see what's left here. That got rid of a good amount of stuff all on the inside here, so that's nice. And I'm going to do this here and make that all one section. I don't see anything touching there. And we want to get rid of this here. And hit remove islands again. And now we got rid of the whole outside. So we give this a good little once over here just to make sure the curve is really following where I want. And again, I didn't really want to go all the way back here maybe. So let's pull this down. I'm going to pull straight down from this curve here, like right down. So I don't know why I'm being so finicky because I'm really just kind of showing you the process here, but you'll see it's pretty easy to get what you want out as far as adding, removing the area where you're going to extract a curve. So this looks pretty good. Let's maybe make this a little thinner here. But yeah, it's following the gum line pretty well. Drawing this curve in by hand would be kind of challenging. So granted, the curves will snap to the mesh, and they can propagate along high curvature areas, but most likely if you're trying to do that with just a draw tool, you might have to poke around a good amount and redelete and re-add, and you're dealing with some of the spline data here. It's pretty easy, but I think this method is pretty foolproof. So what I want, if I can do, is I could always turn my regions off and look at stuff again, make sure everything's pretty smooth, and then I will hit extract. So now you'll see it's putting this curve line all into the red area, and like I said, it's going to do like minimum distance path, so it's going to follow in and out. Okay. This is one of those areas where maybe I do want to cut this back to follow closer in there, but for this, I'm going to say it's pretty good. But we're going to get those edges pretty nice. And I don't see anything weird going on with the curve. Again, if you turn the region colors off, a lot of times it's easier to see the curve on the mesh. So this little green is like a start and end point, so you don't have to worry about that. But this looks pretty good. So once that is done, I can hit OK. I've extracted a curve out that is on the mesh. And what I'm going to do is convert this to a boundary. Actually, and when I convert it to a boundary, if I come in and look on my display tab and I turn my edges on and I zoom way in here, you can see that this boundary cuts all the triangles. So now I'm going to have not like if I highlighted and deleted, I'd have a nice jagged edge here where all the triangles are. Now that I have a boundary line, I divided and cut all the triangles, so my cut is going to be nice and smooth. So I will not have any jagged edges. So what I can do now is I can highlight this selection a little bit, and either in the right-click menu, I can hit Bounded Components. It's also, along with our selection tools here, I can do Bounded Components. Now you can see I'm highlighting the whole bottom. So if I want to, I could always copy this to like a new piece, okay, if I want to keep it. Or I could just hit delete to get rid of it. I'm going to hit copy to new piece just to keep it, okay? And I'm going to hit cut and paste. If I hit copy and paste, it's going to keep this object together and just copy out this as a new one. But if I hit cut and paste, it's going to go away. So now it's going to put this into a new body. This is my second body. So I can always just turn this off. And now I have trimmed teeth with a perfect cut. So simple little tool, works really, really well, gets you really great results on trimming out meshes. So this is a similar thing that you could do too, is on the curves tab here. Like now I did this through the extraction method, but this is how I also do trim things with planes a lot of times too. So I can come in and create bisection and things like that for getting my curvature. Or I could come in and extract a plane somewhere on my features tab. And I could direct a plane if there was some planar data somewhere else, and I can offset that up, and then I can use that plane to create a curve by intersection, and then create a boundary and trim with that, and still have this nice curve line. So that's kind of just one thing I wanted to show off here, is trimming with curves, creating boundaries, and then sectioning stuff out with some nice clean lines. Cheers.